Hello and welcome, I'm Miriam Cates and this is GBN Originals. Another farmers' protest against Labour's inheritance tax raid has taken place, and let's take a look at what this means for our country. We witnessed a remarkable scene in Westminster as thousands of farmers descended upon our capital to voice their frustration over what has been dubbed Labour's family farm tax. This protest is not just about numbers on a balance sheet, it's about our rural communities and the future of British agriculture. Farmers say the government's plan to impose a 20% inheritance tax on agricultural assets worth more than £1 million is not, as the government says, a fair and balanced approach. Instead, it's a devastating blow to thousands of hard-working farming families across our nation. This isn't about targeting the wealthy elite, as Labour seem to believe. No, this tax will hit the heart of rural Britain. We're talking about 70,000 family farms, the backbone of our agricultural sector, facing an average tax bill of £240,000. For many, this will mean selling off parcels of land or even closing down entirely, paving the way for corporate takeovers and the erosion of our farming heritage. Shadow Environment Secretary Victoria Atkins has called out this policy as an ideological attack on rural communities. Let's be clear, this isn't just political rhetoric. The damage is real and it's happening now. Farmers are seeing their investments stalled and worry is spreading through agricultural communities across the country. What's truly concerning is that these farmers, the backbone of our food production, feel compelled to leave their farms and take to the streets. As Atkins pointed out, they don't want to leave their farms, they want to carry on growing food for us. This speaks volumes about the severity of the situation. But there's an even more urgent aspect to this issue that we simply can't ignore. In light of recent global events, particularly the ongoing situation in Ukraine, we're facing a stark reminder of the importance of national security. And let me tell you, national security isn't just about defence spending, it's about food security, energy security and industrial security. This family farm tax is more than just an inconvenience to farmers, it's a direct threat to our nation's food security. By potentially leading to the breakup and damage of farms across the country, we're risking the very foundation of our agricultural sector. And let's not forget the government's obsession with net zero targets. Just days ago, we saw another solar farm approved for prime agricultural land that should be producing food for our tables. This misguided prioritisation of environmental policies over food production is a dangerous game that could have severe consequences for our nation's self-sufficiency. This isn't just about farmers, it's about all of us. As consumers, we need to understand that this process is crucial for ensuring that our food prices are kept steady. In these times of economic uncertainty, the last thing British families need is rising food costs due to misguided policies.
Yes, we're here in Westminster for the Pancake Day farmer rally. Behind us we can see the farmers descending. They're heading down to Trafalgar Square before they start feeding MPs with pancakes apparently. But I'm delighted to be joined by the leader of the Reform Party and MP for Clacton. Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. It's a big day for the farmer community. Why are you here?
I like pancakes, but that's not the real reason. No, look, I actually think the whole of the rural economy, the whole of the rural way of life is directly under threat from a Labour government with a massive majority and a hugely urban mindset. It isn't just farming that's under attack with various tax changes. We're even seeing threats to ban trail hunting. I mean, it's almost unbelievable that you ban people from riding horses. Even a simple thing like shotgun renewals now double the cost over the course of the last few months, and just a feeling that the sort of 15% of people that live and work within the rural economy are being completely ignored by Westminster. That's really right at the heart of this.
So this is about more than the inheritance tax, more than family farm tax. What is Reform's policy? I mean, you're leading in the polls at the moment. What is Reform's policy in a nutshell for farming?
Well, I mean, inheritance tax, let's just take that for a moment. I mean, inheritance tax is double taxation. People have paid tax on this already. Why on earth, when they die, should they be taxed again? We would get rid of inheritance tax. It's a really nasty tax, and it hits people at the most unpleasant part of their life. They just lost their parents, and suddenly the taxman's after them. So we would get rid of inheritance tax, and I've said that very, very clearly. In terms of farming itself, we haven't really quite readjusted from the fact we've left the European Union. We are now in charge of our own agricultural policy. Now, under the Conservatives, it was build back beaver. It seems that the Conservatives want to reintroduce beavers and wolves and haven't really thought at all about food production. So food production has to be at the top of the list, hence that's why it's Pancake Day and why they're here. The other thing I would say is I just don't want to see our farmland covered in ghastly solar farms, all produced in China, with battery storage systems, many of which are now totally unsafe. So let's farm our land, let's do it to produce food. That's got to be the primary goal. And I think we've lost sight of that since Brexit.
I mean, as you'll know, the Climate Change Committee had quite a lot to say the other day. They're saying that we should essentially halve the number of sheep and cattle in this country, and also we should all cut down on 2 kebabs worth of meat per week. Are you willing to do your bit?
Eat more meat. Eat more British-produced meat. I mean, absolutely. The Climate Change Committee, God help us.
They've got a lot of power, Nigel.
Do they actually know what's going on in India and China and Indonesia? The world is going to burn 8 billion tonnes of coal this year. I don't think eating good lamb, good beef, good pork, I can't see any harm in it at all. So I'm going to ignore them completely. They are hopelessly out of touch. They literally want to stop us eating meat, stop us flying on holiday, stop us living their lives. Do you know what? They can go to hell.
Okay, well, I've got to ask you about what's been going on when it comes to Ukraine and our relationship with the United States and all of that. Keir Starmer saying we as a country are now on a war footing. We need to up our defence spending. We're having 1.6 billion in the way of a missile deal for Ukraine. Does that go far enough now the US has frozen military aid to Ukraine?
We'll just get a sort of sense of perspective on this. The entire size of the British Army, including logistics, is 70,000. It's the smallest British Army there's been for a very, very long time. Unless we work with the Americans, militarily, we're going to be in a very difficult position. The coalition of the willing without America, Starmer will look round and find that no one's there. So there needs to be a rapprochement between Zelensky and Trump. And interestingly, I think what Starmer showed at the weekend was, with Brexit, we're free to act on our own. And I really want to see Keir Starmer do everything he can to use his newly elevated position on the world stage to bring those two together. We have to have the beginnings of a deal.
I'm in front of a big forage harvester that's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. This is the type of kit farmers need to invest in just in order to bring us pancakes. I'm delighted to be with Tim Farron, former Liberal Democrat leader. Tell me, Tim, just how important is this issue to your constituents?
Well, massively. I mean, I'm privileged to represent 1,500 farms in the lakes and the dales, the rest of Westmoreland, a beautiful part of the world, but a place where farming is not profitable. So many farmers in my neck of the woods will own their own farms. On paper, those farms may well be worth 2 or 3 million if they were to ever sell them, but yet the income of those farms will be less than the minimum wage. So you do the math. If you've got to, pay a £200,000 inheritance tax bill over a 10-year period, you're going to be spending more on tax every year than you actually earn as a farm. So what will you do? You'll go out of business or you'll sell up. And who will you sell up to? It won't be the neighbouring farm because they're in the same pickle as you. It'll go to private equity and people using the land for offsetting and so on. So it's deeply unjust and unfair on my farmers, but it's also incredibly stupid because it undermines Britain's capacity to feed itself, which we need now more than ever.
Would you say this is one of the biggest sort of cleavages between you and the Labour Party at the moment?
Well, I think the last Conservative government also treated farming terribly. I mean, what we've not mentioned so much at the moment is that this government is ramping up what the previous government did when it came to cutting the basic payment. 76% cut this year in the basic payment, which I think will leave many tenant farmers literally incapable of being able to afford the rent. So we take the view that we're the one party in the countryside that gets the countryside on the side of working farmers, whether they be owner-occupiers or tenants, and we're determined to be that voice. We know what farmers need is to be able to trade freely with our neighbours on the other side of the channel. They need to be supported with public money for public goods, and they need to be, above all else, supported to produce food, which neither this government nor the last one has supported them to do.
Now, of course, we've been talking a lot about defence, situation with Ukraine, also the special relationship with the United States. I mean, how do you think things are going on that front? There have been some controversial comments made by J.D. Vance, the Vice President, about us just being a random country. That was one assessment of what he had to say, that hasn't fought a war in 30, 40 years. I mean, what's your assessment of the state of our relationship with the United States at the moment?
Well, it's all things are the United States government's choice. They are. If the UK is trying to be a bridge between Ukraine and America, it doesn't really help if one side of the bridge, the bank is crumbling because people on that side are basically digging it away. I mean, JD Vance's comments are offensive and they are ridiculous. People I know lost their lives fighting for our country, but also fighting for America in Afghanistan, Iraq. And so look, we all say things we shouldn't say sometimes, and JD Vance should apologise and ask forgiveness, and if he does, I'm sure it'll be granted.
Yeah, we don't normally hear the Liberal Democrats talking about war very often, but would you be pro increasing defence spending up to 3%? What's the policy from the Liberal Democrats on that front?
Massively. I mean, we were calling for the increase in defence spending long before any other opposition party did and before the government said that they would. There's no doubt, but for us, the best way to avoid war is to be properly armed and properly defended. And the fact is we have seen under the last Conservative government 10,000 people lost from the armed forces through those cuts, and we're in a position now where we have the smallest armed forces for just about 200 years. And so it's vital that we invest in our defence industries and indeed in widening the size of our army to protect peace, to protect Britain's ability to do soft power around the world, and to make sure that we play our part in terms of providing security in Europe. The only thing I agree with Donald Trump on is the fact that the European countries, including the UK, should have been doing more to invest in their own security in the last few years. Frankly, so many of us in the West saw the Berlin Wall coming down and thought, great, peace in our time, and we stupidly, as a whole, West America included, took our eye off the ball, and Putin is the result of all that. It is not too late to put that right. We need to invest now.
Do you reckon we need to cut down on the old welfare spending to fund defence?
Well, I don't think you do any good if you're trying to defend a country and then you undermine your support for your poorest people. When people talk about welfare spending, pensions are the biggest part of welfare spending. Are we going to have a go at people who've worked hard all their lives, or people who are just unfortunate to have lost their jobs, like any of us can do, like lots of MPs?
So taxes up then?
So I take the view that in a war economy, then good old-fashioned Keynesianism, what worked in the last time round, is that you invest in the economy and that creates employment and it creates economic growth. That's the intelligent way to do it. It isn't by, attacking our pensioners.
And one last fun question. What's your favourite topping on your pancake?
My favourite topping on pancake? Oh, we'll go for Nutella. Is that allowed?
That is allowed. Nutella from Tim Farron. That's the former leader of the Liberal Democrats talking about farmers and what's going on really with our defence and foreign affairs as well. Back to you, Tom.
Do we want to be a country that values its agricultural heritage and food security, or one that sacrifices it on the altar of misguided environmental policies? In conclusion, these issues from our fields to our factories are not just policy debates. They're about the kind of country we want to be, the values we hold dear, and our place on the world stage. As we move forward, let's ensure that we're making decisions that truly put Britain first, not just in slogans, but in substance. Thank you for watching. This is Miriam Cates. Don't forget to subscribe to GB News YouTube channel for the latest.